Hello and welcome to a Jump Advisory, our last webinar of the year. And this webinar, as we've said, is you can ask your questions and we will answer your questions as best as humanly possible. So as always, if you can hear me, if you can just drop a note into the chat box so we know that you can actually hear us as people join in. It's been a very, very interesting year, and I was sort of racking my brains really over what we'd done this year and what's sort of gone on this year. And it's a really interesting sort of viewpoint when we start to look at it. So, Paul, let's cast our minds back. We started doing the webinars as Love Work Life back on, would you believe, the 25th of March.
Unbelievable, isn't it? You could never have predicted what this year was going to bring, could you, Howard? I mean, it's been bizarre to say the least.
Bizarre to say the least. And to say what we've done, we've delivered 42 plus webinars as Love Work Life and Jump. We did around about 30 odd webinars with the REC from that. And this is excluding the training webinars that we've been doing as well. They're up to 42 as well. On these webinars, we've had just short of 5,000 individual attendees. So we've really sort of smashed the marketplace and touched the marketplace. So I want to thank everybody that's on here for attending. Your attendance has been as much welcome. I hope you've enjoyed them as much as we have, and we're going to carry on doing them next year. So we said questions and answers. And we asked you to start to fire your questions in, and we've got lots of questions that have come in that we want to sort of cover. So we're going to run for around about 45 minutes. If we get lots of more questions from you guys as you're on, then feel free to ask, whatever you want to ask of us. We can go from there. Today, I've got Paul Jacobs with me. Dave Pye will be joining us. He's just finishing up with a client. Paul Sharp can't be joining us because he's working with a client that we have from Finland. I'm not sure what he's helping with the Finnish do, but he's certainly doing something with them. So probably trying to teach them to keep warm at this time of year. But so Paul won't be joining us. So from the three of us, obviously, we'll kick off this year. So Paul, one of the questions that you got asked, you were talking about one of the questions you got asked just before coming on air. What was the question that you got asked by one of your clients on site?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was a keynote speaker for a client yesterday in their virtual Christmas do. And one of the questions I was asked was, can you name the three things that you would take from this COVID experience? What were the three most important lessons that you perhaps have understood during this incredibly challenging year? And it was a good question. In typical Paul Jacobs fashion, I think I came up with six, but I'll try and sort of condense. My sense about this year is, number one, expect the unexpected. I think, the thing is that if anybody on January the 1st had said, guess what, guys? We're going into a series of lockdowns this year. The economy is going to, fall off the edge of a cliff. We're going to have a global pandemic affect us. We're all going to be working from home, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we would have suggested that person sought some assistance because, the truth is nobody could have predicted this year. And I think that what it's taught me is that expect the unexpected. And in that sense, always be looking to change, always be looking to adapt, to be agile, to do things differently, because nothing clearly ever stays the same forever. And I think what happened this year is we've had this, as in our industry, but of course globally, this major jolt that I think enabled us to step back and take a good, strong look at the way we run our businesses, the way we interact with our clients and our candidates, the methods, the practices, the policies, the procedures. All of those things have come under great scrutiny because we've been pushed into this situation. And I think what I'd like to take from this is that whilst one would hope that we never, ever go through this again, I think we ought to be aware that rather than wait for a crisis to impact the way we run our businesses, we should be much more proactive and be consistently looking at how we change and how we adapt, how we create agility in our business. So for me, that's a really, really, really strong and important lesson that I think has been delivered to all of us this year. I think technology, clearly, here we are, as you said at the beginning of the webinar, here we are on our umpteenth webinar this year, which we thoroughly enjoyed. And again, I'll add to your point, thank you to everybody who's been so supportive and have joined us every week. We really, really appreciate it, and it's been great fun. I think that technology now is something that we as an industry have embraced through necessity. And I think that as the technology becomes more and more sophisticated, as it unquestionably will in the forthcoming months and years, this will be the staple, if you like, platform for us to conduct our discussions with clients and candidates. And there's more to follow. We've talked about new technology coming in a whole range of ways, and there'll be a whole range of technological advances that I think will transform our industry and indeed commerce as a whole. I think the third thing is, for me, the discussion around is it possible to work from home has now literally been kicked out the door, hasn't it? I think we all now know, yes, we can work from home. That's linked to the technology thing, but I think it also means that as business owners, we can interact with anybody in the world. We can employ and engage with our own people, anybody, anywhere in the UK or indeed abroad. And I think that for the industry is going to make a major difference. We will not go back to standard 9 to 5 hours in the future. What we will end up having is a situation where we, like most industries, will be working to a degree 365 days a year, 24/7. I'm speaking loosely here, but we will adapt our working hours to suit the needs of our candidates and clients. And I said yesterday, and I mean it, I think in 50 years' time, students will look back at this period of history and laugh at the fact that we all got onto trains and tubes and cars and went to work at exactly the same time. And we all went out to lunch at exactly the same time and then drove home at exactly the same time. They'll think it's crazy. And I think that what we've experienced in the last 9 to 12 months is going to be that sort of conduit into whatever the new world of work means. And that will mean a closure on this 9 to 5 attitude that we've had for many, many years.
I think it's quite interesting that we talk about working from home and we talk about how that's affected and how that's changed our lives. And I read an article today in one of the recruitment magazines, which just simply made me giggle from there, that they said they'd done a review of 1,200 recruiters and working from home, and they'd found that 90% of them are drunk whilst working from home. And my comment was, well, what do you actually expect, from there? But they also announced that 53% had also had sex during work time as well. But I think it's sort of the view that we've got to start to look at it is that it is working time, but it's also personal time as well.
Yeah.
And it's how you balance them both, and it's how you get that balance right to give a true work-life balance for your staff and for your people, and that will increase productivity. I think that question, when you told me at 2 minutes to 11 about the question, and I started to sort of think about what I would do, what I've learned, and I think the first thing that I would sort of say as my top 3 would be people. It's all about your people. And when we start to talk about people, we talk about your employees that you engage with constantly. You talk about the clients that you work with every single day and the clients that you want to engage with. You talk about the candidates that you should be working with and want to be working with. And you talk about your suppliers and how you treat your suppliers. If you look at those as your people that you have a touch point with and what you do with those people, you start to understand how well your business is perceived and received by your employees. How engaged are they within your business and your purpose? By your clients and by your candidates, are they on that journey with you and developing that journey with you? And by your suppliers, how your suppliers have treated you during this period will be really sort of testament to how well you work with your suppliers and whether or not you see that your suppliers as true value. And it's really interesting when we talk about AI, and you were talking about sort of artificial intelligence and how it's working. Most recruiters don't trust the intelligence, even the information that they get from artificial intelligence, but we're putting more and more artificial intelligence in. And what that's actually doing is saving a massive amount of time for recruiters. So people become really important, and how you engage people's time becomes really important. And it all evolves around that trust word and how you are trusted by that community of people that you engage with. So I think that's a really important thing for me. The first part would be people. The next thing that I think I found hugely, and certainly I've taken this from people that I've been working with and clients that I've been working with, is strategy. Is how has your strategy enabled you to cope, A, when coming into lockdown, and B, carry on coping during lockdown, and what is your strategy as you start to move out of lockdown? And having a strategy and working with that strategy and constantly looking at that strategy is really important. And I think what strategy planning I've done with my people, I've found that where you look at the strengths in your business and where you look at your weaknesses in your business become absolutely up there and in front of you constantly, and you've got to then start to review on how you work with that. So a lot of the processes in the business, and again we go back to AI and what people are doing, what we've suddenly found is that a lot of our processes for our business aren't truly fit for purpose and therefore must change. So I think it's going to have a huge knock-on effect with recruitment on how we change our process and what processes we do to actually move forward. And the final third I thought was very, very simple to me. What's it sort of changed from us from there? If you look at people and you look at strategy, you start to look at execution, how we execute our strategy and how we execute our actual processes. Does it benefit the consultant? Does it benefit the client? Does it benefit the candidate? And I think if you start to look at those three things and start to look at what we've learned from those things, it gives you a huge view of how you can move your business forward and what you can do to move your business forward. Dave Pye's joined us. So Dave, welcome. I hope you're well. I think you're still on mute, Dave, so we won't be able to hear you. If you do want to add anything to the conversation. The question that was asked was a question that Paul was asked by one of his clients on a thing yesterday, and the question was, what are the three things that stand out most that you think you've learned from lockdown?
Three things from lockdown. Good morning, everybody. Apologies that I was running a bit late, but I've been on another webinar with the CEO of LinkedIn for EMEA, just talking to LinkedIn about what's been going on in the recruitment industry from our perspective as well as theirs. So that was an interesting hour and a half. Three things from lockdown that I've learned from lockdown, or challenges.
Paul?
That you've learned, Dave?
That I've learned?
Yeah.
One is look after your people. In fact, the number 1, 2, and 3 are look after your people, communicate with your people, and ask them how they're doing. And I'll add one word to the really important question is, when you ask somebody how they are, please add on the word today. How are you today? Because how they are today can be very different to how they'll be tomorrow and how they were yesterday. And that little word today means so much to people. And I think because we've all been through such a bumpy last 6 or 7 months with different people in different places and home and work and all of that that's gone on, I think staying close to your people and understanding where they're at, where their head's at, has been the thing that I've learned most about the last 6-9 months.
Okay, so some really interesting sort of views from that point of view. So let's jump into some of the questions, and let's jump into some of the questions that we have. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to sort of invite people, if they want to ask their question personally. So Karen Deep, you've asked a question. If you want to ask your question personally, just stick your little hand up on the panel there, and I will then come and invite you in so you can ask your question. And guys, we can sort of look at giving them to talk. So Kaz, how are you, mate? I've not spoken to you for a while. It's been a long time since we had the conversation and called you Karen with Phil Davis, but it's not been forgotten. So I hope you're well, mate. So fire away with your question.
I'm good, thanks, H. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten about it. I'm expecting a Christmas card. No, my question was obviously going into the new year. It's time for appraisals, reviews, whatever you want to call them, where you're sitting down on a one-to-one basis with your staff. How do you feel you can actually make them purposeful, supportive, motivating, and getting buy-in so that your staff are actually walking away from appraisals motivated to achieve the goals, as opposed to, I think traditionally appraisals can be seen as a necessary evil where you do them for the sake of doing them. But if you ask yourself honestly, did the consultant go away motivated to achieve the goals you set? And are they bought into it? Often the answer is no.
I've got a I've got a slightly different way of thinking about an appraisal that you may want to consider just for this next one.
Yep.
Invite them in for an appraisal. Ask them to appraise you. How did you do? How were you for them? And out of that will follow all the questions that you also want to know as a leader, as a manager, about how they're doing.
Right. Okay.
So rather than the usual appraisal of you've delivered X, you've delivered Y, and you've done this and you've done that, flip it on its head and say to them, this is what you're going to ask them. And I guarantee you'll come out of it closer to the person you're talking to, but you'll get some really good feedback, and you will still, as a leader, you've got the skills to be able to interpret those answers and then ask them, so how did that make you feel? Did that help you with your performance? Did that help you with that client? How you find the business development? You'll still be able to get the answers that you need to continue with your business. But I just think that subtle change will make it a much deeper, wider conversation. And if you think of it as a conversation rather than an appraisal, the mindset will also be different for the person who's on the other end of it.
Definitely. And how do you feel you can break down those barriers where I think some people can be a little apprehensive to be honest and critical, which is ultimately, as a leader, what you want your staff to be critical, because if you don't know and don't get that information, you can't change it. To remove those sort of boundaries of them thinking, well, I don't want to overstep the mark and say something that might upset my boss.
Maybe I could jump in here. Hi, mate.
I am.
A couple of things I would add. I'm against having just an annual appraisal. I think that the way to conduct this, perhaps thinking about it next year and onwards, would be to have quarterly conversations so that there are no major shocks or surprises.
Oh, 100%.
I think that way you deal with that sort of jarring annual appraisal thing, which, as you say, it feels like people are, to them, it can often feel as if they're going into a court to defend themselves.
Yep.
So I think having the quarterly discussions. The other thing is to look at what you're appraising people on. I'm picking up on Dave's point. In recruitment, we tend to be fairly binary about this. We look purely at figures. It's often the way people get assessed, particularly frontline consultants, rather than people supporting the business from a backroom perspective. But I think you've got to look at it from a much more multi-layered perspective. And I agree with Dave. I think one of the things that should be asked is, how did I perform as your boss? And I think that method of getting that interaction, that discussion, is a very positive thing. But I would bring into that discussions around client and candidate perspectives of somebody's performance. So, with one particular client, we've recently reviewed the way we do appraisals and performance reviews on a quarterly basis. And part of that is to get from the clients every quarter some reviews based upon a sort of questionnaire and a survey. And the people making that call to the clients isn't the consultant, but the line manager of the consultant. And one of the reasons we introduced that was twofold reason, really. One was obviously to get the feedback from clients, and the second was to kind of push the senior leadership team to be making those calls in a disciplined fashion to clients to assess how we were performing, so they could hear at first hand exactly what was happening. And that's pretty transparent. The consultants know that is happening. The other thing we added to that was we changed the bonus scheme. So the bonus scheme also relates quarterly to an additional bonus for a certain percentage mark based upon performance received from the clients and candidates. And I think that if central to your purpose is to provide outstanding customer service, then that should form part of the bonus plan and should form part of the appraisal. And I use that as one example. There are other ways of cutting and dicing this. So I think that if you are conducting these quarterly conversations in the way that Dave's described, I've described, then hopefully the annual conversation is in a sense no more than an extension to the ongoing conversations you've been having all year long. Shouldn't be anything too traumatic for anybody. And I think that question Dave raised is one to ask every quarter rather than annually.
I think your question there, Paul, is, if the people are fearing having an appraisal, then it's not an appraisal.
Yeah.
Because if they fear having an appraisal and coming in to talk about their work, you're obviously not appraising their work, you're just criticizing what they've actually done. And the way I always looked at appraisal is what has gone and what's in the past, I can't change. All I can do is find out what went well and what needs addressing, and how I then can support the person to become better at what they are. So I always start to think about that it's not your appraisal of them, it's their appraisal of themselves, and then you should be adding to that appraisal. So I always think about appraisals in that way, that, I think about, what actually matters to the actual person. So what motivates them inside of work, what motivates them outside of work, and what are you doing to achieve those two things? How are you helping them achieve the things that they want to achieve outside of work as well as inside of work? And that starts to lead to sort of them linking what they're doing from a work point of view to what they're doing from a results point of view, and what their results are allowing them to do. So you then start to think about, what are you doing with regards to their improvement? So you're appraising them, and if they are open and honest with you, they'll be giving them areas of their strength. So what are you doing to help them develop their strength? And they'll be giving you gaps in their their skill set. So what are you doing to train on the gaps? And are you following through on the things that you've actually said within that appraisal? So that appraisal becomes a really positive thing. I think a lot of appraisals focus very heavily on the skills. Okay, and that's where training comes in. What we should also be focusing very heavily on is the behaviors of the person and what they do and how they work. And I think that then it links back to how you are perceived, and if they're appraising you as a manager, how both ways, how has your behavior affected them and their clients and their candidates and their performance, and likewise, how's their behavior affected you and your performance? And that way you start to get a better understanding of each other and driving things forward. One thing that I always try to ask in appraisals is, I want to know what the employee thinks they should carry on doing, what they think they should stop doing, and what they need to introduce into their business that would make them more successful. So all the time I'm looking for things that are going to help them drive them forward, because as I said right at the beginning, I can't change what's past. So if they come in with a 50% against target figure, okay, I can't change that. So what's the point of putting a person on the back foot by giving them a really hard time about that appraisal? Let's look at what we can do moving forward and make that appraisal a really positive environment for the person to actually start to understand. And I think sometimes that word there, they must understand what they need to do and how they need to do that certain thing to achieve. So they might be able to give you things about your processes, things about things that you're doing that may be stopping them achieving, but also maybe stopping other people within the business achieving. So appraisal isn't just about looking at a figure. Appraisal is about the overall functionality of that person within your business, but also what that does from an external point of view as well. And if we go back to the three things I said that I learned in lockdown, the first one was about people. And if you look after your people, then your people look after your candidates and your clients, and they in turn will then come around in full circle and look after yourself. So I think appraisals are really important to find out, what they're doing in those appraisals. So really find out what their achievements are, find out what rituals they're doing every single day that might be a good ritual or a poor ritual, and find out whether that is linking to their wealth and their development of their wealth. So that's what we'd that's what I'd look at, Kaz, if that helps in any way, shape or form.
Definitely helps. Thank you very much.
And if they call you Karen, sack them.
Call them Karen. They should be given extra cash for actually going through with it. But
I'll pass them on to you to pay that bonus out.
Look forward to another hearing from you ever again. No, we'll catch up, Kaz, and we'll have hopefully we'll have a beer soon. Soon, mate. It's been a while, absolutely. From there,
definitely. Thanks for those answers, guys. That was really helpful.
Absolutely pleasure.
Happy New Year to you as well.
Good.
You too.
We have a question as well that came in from Robin Bennett. Debbie, we will come back to you. Obviously, you've got your hand up. Robin, if you stick your little hand up, if you want to actually talk. If not, we will just ask your question, answer it for you. It's up to you. We feel we want to give you the opportunity to do that. So I'm not seeing a hand going up, or I'm not seeing a note in the question box. Let me ask Robin's question to see what we think of that. So as recruitment picks up again, would you expect companies to focus on trying to fill roles themselves first, i.e. saving budget?
Okay, so I think a lot of you guys will be getting similar answers or beginning to get a sense of a feel from your clients around this. And there's a view, I think, that because we know that unemployment is going to continue to rise. I was doing some research yesterday prior to doing a keynote chat, and was looking at the Bank of England's report in November from the governor of the Bank of England, which is quite interesting. And there's, amongst many things he was talking about, there's absolutely the prediction that unemployment is still set to rise in the new year up towards the 7.5% mark. So that we can expect to see more people out of work. And of course, that is out there in the public domain. And I think that therefore clients may feel that they can find people themselves. Talking to my clients, there is a sense that that's their view. I would add on this point, though, that whilst they may be able to find people themselves, are they finding the right people themselves? And the fact that there'll be a large number of people on the job market, unfortunately, doesn't necessarily mean that our clients will find it easy to fill their own roles. I think, in fact, it actually makes it harder for them. I believe that we are now going to be needed more than potentially we've ever been needed before. We've spoken about this a lot. One of the big, if you like, one of the big ticks in boxes for good quality recruitment businesses is not about being able to find candidates. It's about how well you're networked. So do you know the best candidates in your market, not on the market? Because in the end, the fact is that if we're only seeking candidates on the market, the answer to this question is yes, clients can find their own people. Of course they can. They can see the same people we can see on job boards. But if it's about finding the best candidates in the market, i.e. candidates that are actually in jobs that we know how to reach, then that makes us invaluable to our employer clients. And I think, so the answer in my mind to this question is yes, there is a perception, I believe, that clients will feel they can find their own people simply because of the swell of people on the market. But your position has got to be that it's not about the volume of people on the market, it's about the quality of people. And a lot of the people that our clients will want to employ next year will have jobs. And it's our ability to identify those people that's going to separate us out and still allow us to do our jobs correctly. So I think that's your position. That has to be your tactic. Not about finding people, it's finding the right people.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think next year for all of our businesses and for our clients' businesses, next year is going to be about growth. Either more growth, if they've had a relatively good year this year, despite what's been going on, or trying to get back some of the lost revenue and profit that they've had because of the pandemic. And growth comes with focus. And for most of our clients, focus is not, their best focus is not recruiting people. That's why we exist. Our job is to find them the people. And I think as long as we can articulate the value that we create being really good recruiters, then I think next year we won't be in so much competition with internal recruiters or clients doing it themselves. Because if we can articulate to our clients the cost of getting it wrong, because what we do is find people, because that's our job, that's our career, that's our art, that's our science, whichever way you look at it, that's what we do. If they get that wrong, the cost is significant. And given that they're coming off the back of a really tough year, they can't afford to get it wrong. They can't afford to make any mistakes. So my message to the client would be, if you don't want to make mistakes and you want to get the right people, you need to let us do that work for you, and you concentrate on your core business. And then demonstrate with intelligent recruiting that you'll find the right person for them.
Yeah, and Dave, just to add that point, I think it's about time. You've made a great point there. I think what we, as professional recruiters, do is we give our clients the time to do the jobs they need to do to concentrate on their core business activities. And time is, as we all know, is a very precious thing.
Yeah.
So anything that can shortcut time and give them time back is worth investing in. And that, I think, is what we as great recruiters do. We give our clients time.
I think from my point of view, I think a lot of people's memories are very, very short at this moment in time. And I think it was yesterday they announced, the government, that the unemployment rate had raised to a figure of 4.9% of the employed populace were unemployed. If we go back to 2008 or 2009, that figure was at 8%. If we go back to 1990, that figure was at 10.6%.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not even halfway compared to we were, you know, in the financial crash, and we're not anywhere near where we were back in 1990. So we've got to start to think about a simple thing, and what you guys have said is absolutely right. It's about giving the client time and giving the client an expert service. And I've said this on lots of webinars. The day before lockdown, there was X amount of candidates available on the marketplace. Today, those X amount of candidates are still available on the marketplace. The only difference is the number of people who are unemployed have become bigger, which means that the number of people applying for jobs becomes more, which means that your clients has more people applying and therefore have a bigger problem sifting through all the things that we normally do, either removing all the rubbish applications and vetting people before they actually get to that short list. They're having now a huge, great long list. And so what Paul and Dave were saying about saving time for the client is absolutely paramount. And what we've got to start to think about is what the clients have said through lockdown, the major things they're looking to do. The major things they're looking to do is to reduce the time it takes to recruit. The major thing they're going to do is improve their recruitment process. Another major thing they were going to improve was to improve the candidate's journey through that recruitment process. Another thing they wanted to improve was the amount of data that they had to make more informed decisions from a recruitment process. We can provide all of that information to them and help them do all of those type of things. So we become an actual value benefit to them. And that's about data that you can extract and use when selling back to a client. So I think when we say, is it going to be, our clients going to focus on their roles? Yes, because they always do, because that's what saves them time in their own minds. But when they've had that conversation, what they've never had in the room with them is a recruiter talking about how they can actually reduce their recruitment processes, time and overall cost, and how they can improve the number of candidates that they get with regards to fit for the business, which again means their duration that they stay at the business is longer, again reducing the overall cost of recruitment. Yep. Because those people who are the clients want to recruit aren't going to be on job boards, aren't going to be answering job adverts. They still need to be headhunted. They still need to be found in the marketplace. So we need to sell our benefits even more now to our clients and get them to understand why that we are a specialist in the marketplace and not just that person they go to because they think they have to go to. Yep. So I think that's, to me, would be the answer to that question from there. Devia's you've got your hand up, Devia. You want to ask a question? I'm assuming because you put your hand up, you want to ask it live. So I'm going to allow you to talk. So I've just unmuted your mic. Hey,
Devia.
Hang on, I've not.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Good. Thank you very much. Good. Thank you. My question is that I have pivoted, and we've now also got a coaching side arm to the business, and so we not only recruit, but we also evolve those on the A team, especially in the finance. But what I'm finding is that the market is seeing me more as a coach now, as opposed to a recruiter. And it's how do you get that balance to be still say, look, I still recruit, but we want to also make sure that those that are within the company are, playing big and being confident in what they do.
Yep. I mean, let me kick it off. I think this is, for me, a marketing question. I think it's a lot about your presence as a business and how that is perceived, as you say, by your clients. I mean, there's no question in my mind, Dev, given your lengthy and hugely successful recruitment background, there's no reason why training, coaching should diminish your background and experience and knowledge. If anything, to my mind, offering training and coaching is an add-on that adds enormous value to the people you work with. The fact that you now are able to provide a variety of services should be a strength, not be perceived as a weakness. So I think it comes down to how you're going to get that across via the marketing that you put out there. That's on social media, on your website, the messaging you send out, the posts you put out, and so forth. And I think that may be something that you'd want to look at with a professional marketing person who would give you some strong advice as to how you get that messaging across. I would see that personally as a major plus for you. Obviously, you don't want what you're now doing in coaching to diminish your potential income on recruitment, but I would see it as an add-on. I think that this is now an opportunity, as you're probably already working on this, to cross-sell and upsell, to work with customers. If you're offering coaching, and you're getting more embedded with a customer because you're able to do that, then the natural thing is to be able to then ask for the opportunity to help recruit and vice versa. So it's a definite advantage, and kudos to you for doing it. But I think it now comes down to your positioning from a marketing perspective, and that I think requires some expert advice.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me, without knowing your business, Debbie, I would ask you the question: what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known as a recruiter? Do you want to be known as a trainer or a coach? Or do you want to be known as a provider of talent solutions? And when you've worked out yourself what it is that you want your business, and I don't know whether your business is you or there's a whole team of people, but when you've answered yourself that question, what do I want to be known for? Then all of the communications, the marketing should be built around that story, around your story. And your story may be an excellent recruiter that's moved into coaching, but you're still an excellent recruiter and your business is still doing excellent recruitment work. And then that story becomes what you, to Paul's point about marketing, to what you take to market, so that your clients, and more importantly, your prospects, don't lose the fact that you've got 2 or 3 different strings to your bow.
I think I echo what both Paul and Dave said, that it is a marketing sort of a conundrum, is how you separate the two sides of the business. And I always think if you're it's like dual desking. What's better, having people doing permanent and contract on a dual desk, or actually splitting those desks out? And I think it's where you focus. If you're trying to have your recruiters sell training, then are they the specialist in training? And if you've got your trainers selling recruitment, are they specialists in recruitment? So again, it's how your clients perceive you at the end of the day and what they feel when you actually go to market. So it's not blurring the two together. I think it's separating the two out and going to market as individual products and driving those individual products into the marketplace. And therefore your marketing has to be on an individual line with regards to a line of recruitment and a line on coaching, so you can see what's going on and working from there, and not trying to blur the two together. So as soon as you start to blur the two together, then you're not known for either or. You become a jack of all trades and a master of none in their eyes. So separate them out, whether it be on social media, whether it be on your website, etc., and make sure that people are used in their strengths. So if your strength is recruitment, make sure that person's in the recruitment arm. If the person's strength is training, then make sure they're in that training arm and that coaching arm, and make sure that you utilize their strengths. It's to me a fairly simplistic answer, but sometimes it's quite, the lines get very blurred between the two subjects. You've got to make sure you have 2 distinct products and you go to market in 2 distinct fashions.
And I agree with Howard there, Devia. I think it's about rebranding. And sometimes I've launched lots of businesses over the years, and sometimes it's about the branding, as Howard says, having things that are independent and separate. The people behind the brands are precisely the same people offering the services across the other brands, but it's how you're perceived, and giving yourself that niche, if you like, so that you're not seen as a generalist, you're seen as an expert.
Okay. We have another question in from Jim, who was due on today, but I know he dropped me a line saying that he's working with a client. They've just dropped some urgent jobs on him, and his question is this, and this is a question, guys, that you two are going to love, and I'm sure the people on the webinar here are going to love as well, because we come back to that famous word, the Brexit word. So is it onwards and upwards from here, or will Brexit and a no deal stroke bad deal set us back again?
Okay, I'll kick this off. As everybody knows, I am the leading expert on Brexit. I think probably no more than the man leading this country. That is tongue in cheek. Look, I'm just going to be the ever eternal optimist here. I still think that, and I'm sure I'm going to get a barrage of emails if this doesn't happen. I still think there's a deal that's going to be done. There's a lot of rhetoric, a lot of saber rattling. And, you know, we've seen this over and over and over again, that it comes down to the last second of the last minute of the last hour. And finally, amazingly, they reach a deal. From everything you read, we are 98% towards an agreement, 98%. You'd wonder why we can't just agree to do business on the 98% that we've agreed and keep talking about the 2%, but then I'm not a politician, am I? I'm still very hopeful. The fact is that there is no advanced civilized country from an economic perspective that doesn't do the vast majority of its business with its neighbours. When they talk about an Australian deal, as far as I'm aware, there is no tunnel between Australia and Europe, and we are absolutely intrinsically involved with Europe. One has to do business with Europe. So I'm very optimistic still, despite the news, that hope that we will end up with a deal. If we don't end up with a deal and we go no deal, we can't deny it's going to have an impact on the UK, particularly in the first 3 months of next year. I think there are probably more businesses out there than they talk about, because the media like to talk about the bad news, not the good news, that are well prepared for a no deal. I'm pretty certain that the large corporations particularly will be pretty well attuned to dealing with a no deal already. I can't imagine they've left it this late not to be prepared. I think it's going to have a bigger impact on the SMEs, where there is less resource and a lot more confusion and less ability to understand what's going on. There's no doubt it will have an impact on this country in the first 3 or 4 months next year if we have a no deal. In the medium to long term, I believe, as they say, we'll be fine. I think the country is very strong. We are a leading economic power, maybe not the leading economic power that some people would like to think, but we're certainly one of the leading economic powers in the world, and we'll be fine. But there's no question that if we have a no deal, it is going to have an impact, particularly in certain industry sectors around things like logistics, for example. But let's just keep our fingers crossed that that doesn't happen, and that we find ourselves very soon listening to the news about a deal, a last gasp, that has been sorted between the UK and Europe, because I believe that's something that has to happen.
Dave?
Yeah, I was not a fan of Brexit. Very happy to say it. I think Brexit is all about Boris, and Boris is all about Brexit. I don't think he wants a deal, even though he's saying he does. So I am less optimistic than Paul. What I am optimistic about is that whatever the answer is, whilst it will be bumpy to start off with, we will get through it. Because even as someone who voted against it, all the things that I thought would happen if Brexit was going to happen didn't. And all the people that voted for Brexit and said all of these terrible things will happen, they haven't either. So the answer is no one really knows how it's going to be. All we can do is continue to keep as close as we can to the people that we serve, as close as we can to our own people, and ride whatever the wave comes along. Hopefully, Paul, hopefully there'll be a deal. But I don't think there will be, and I don't think Boris has ever really wanted one. So we'll just see. But from a recruitment point of view, businesses will, to my earlier answer, businesses will still need to grow. Businesses will still need to trade with Europe. And more importantly, Europe will still need to trade with us.
Yeah.
So we will find a way.
Yeah.
Somehow we will find a way. Yeah. And I think the best thing to do, it's almost like a bit like the COVID answer. the best thing to do is to turn the news off, because it's not there to feed us with any encouragement. And, you know, we will find, we as a nation, we have come through significantly bigger things than what we've been hit with in this last year. True. And we'll do so again.
True.
I think I echo that last sentence there, that we will find a way. And I think what's great about business, and I'll take the middle ground here, one for, one against. I'll stand on the fence, sit on the fence and say, okay, it didn't matter what we voted for, one was going to lose and one was going to win. And whichever side you're on, it makes no difference. What makes a difference is whatever happens, you've got to find a way to actually work within that marketplace and what's happening within that marketplace. So come, the 1st of January, when the clock strikes 12, it's what do we do? How do we work? What's going on? And what you'll find is that there'll be a lot of very intelligent people there who are creating lots of ways of doing business, which will start with the big marketplace and very quickly filter down into the SME marketplace, as it always does. And what we've got to think is this: as much as we want to do business with Europe wants to do business with us. And so not only are we trying to find a way of doing business with them, they will also be trying to find a way of doing business with us. So we've got to remember is that I think it's 43% of our country's GDP is comes from Europe. Well, Europe also has a massive GDP that sort of is reliant on the UK. So whatever happens, we will all be working. So you could almost put the politicians to one side and then say business will take over, and business will find a way of working within the framework of what they've got to actually do business together and work with business together. So I think you've got to look at it from the positive point of view, whatever happens, and as we've done with COVID, look at what positives we can make from it, what can we do and address it, and have a plan that always is, what if this happens, what if that happens, and look at the vice versa. What happens if it doesn't happen? What happens if it does? So, and look at that way and make sure your plan and your strategy is always in place to do that thing. That way, you've always got the right strategy, irrespective of what decision the politicians tend to make, not make, try to make, can't even think about making, don't want to make, whatever it be they're doing at that time, and move forward from there. So I think there's lots of things that we can start to talk about from that. Dave, you were sort of, some of your clients were talking to you. Have any of your clients been asking you questions directly? As we're running out of questions from the panel, we put some of the questions up, people like Karen Deep, etc. There was other people asking similar types of questions, so we've hoped we've answered them all. Dave, you any other questions that you've been asked just recently?
Well, I think one of them is about it's almost a bit of like a futuristic question. What does 2021 look like, and how do I navigate through it? The usual sort of questions we get asked as advisors. And my answer has always been to what it was at 11:10 when I joined the webinar a bit later, is just be close to your people, get them to be close to their customers. Where we add the value is where we understand what's going on in our customer base. Where we as leaders add value to our businesses is where we understand what's going on with our people and what's going on with their customers. And I think, we've just got to look at it, take it on a quarter by quarter basis. We don't know what's going to happen with lockdowns. We don't know what's going to happen with the vaccine and the rollout. So just take next year, look forward to January, and take it on a quarter by quarter basis, and let's have a look at where we're going. Still need a plan. Hopefully you've been working, some of our clients have been working with us on our jump forward plan. You still need a plan, but you also need to be cognizant of the fact that the next 13 weeks and then the following 13 weeks, and that's how you get through it.
Yeah, and I think if we're looking into next year, there's a general view, I think, that as Dave just correctly described, I think the first 3-4 months of next year is going to be up and down again. I think it's clear that the vaccines will start circulating. If the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine gets approval very quickly, that will be the game changer, because you'll be looking then at a very quick and very swift expanse of vaccinations across the UK. It's the cheaper drug, about it's quite considerably cheaper than the Pfizer drug, and easier to transport. So we can expect to see big changes. But I think that we are going to continue in the early part of next year to go through these stop-start motions that we're still going through. Once we get beyond spring, once we get to March, April, I think quite clearly things will start improving. And the Bank of England and every other economic forecaster is talking about the back end of next year, the last 6 months, showing very significant growth. And the Bank of England saying that they expect to see by the first quarter of 2022, us as a nation very much back to where we were economically pre-COVID. So, we are on the homeward straight. Definitely things are going to improve. We are going to have a much better year next year. Lots to look forward to. But as Dave said, it's all about sprints. It's all about 30, 60, 90-day sprints, being very aware of actions that need to be taken in a short period of time, and getting beyond what I think is still going to be a tricky 3 months ahead. But we've come this far. We've been through worse. This second lockdown, the one we're still in or just coming out of, is not as bad as that first lockdown that occurred on March the 18th. And we know we can cope. We know we're stronger and better and fitter and more able, wiser than we were when we came into this. And I think that as we get through the first few months of next year, we can look forward to, I believe, a much better year ahead. But again, and I'll say this, if you look at the REC statistics that came out in their job report last week, you'll see that the temp market is coming back strongly. It was 4 months on the turn, an increase in temp numbers or interim numbers. We said this months and months and months ago. It's already following that classic curve upwards. Temps, interims come back faster than perms. So the temp interim market, be aware of it, get into it, make sure you're doing well with it. The perm market will follow off the back of that next year. So good things to look forward to, everybody, but we're not out of it quite yet.
I think the way I look at 2021 is very simple, and I'll use this sort of analogy that my son is learning to drive. There's not a lot of things that actually scare me, but sitting in a car with my son absolutely petrifies me. My son's a little bit, well, he's not a little bit, he's very dyspraxic, which means his coordination isn't great, his peripheral view isn't great, and it has to be all learnt. So unlike where people normally learn things quite naturally, his movement and view has to be learned for him. So he has to experience these things. So, I can't say how much I've tried to put my foot through the bottom of a car all the way through this process. I can't how many times I have screamed, how many times I've gone through a roundabout with my eyes closed, wishing and hoping I get to the other side. And what it sort of says to me, and what I sort of start to realize, I can only control what I can control. And I think that's what 2021 is about, is control what you can control. And it was interesting he's getting a lot better at driving now, and he's on his test on Christmas Eve, so hopefully he'll pass, and I will never have to sit in a car with him again from there, but hopefully he'll pass. But, what he was saying the other day was, how do I stop that car doing that, Dad? How do I stop this car doing this? And I said, you can't stop that car doing Max. You can only control what you can control. But what if that car crashes into me? That's my fault, according to the instructor. I said, if you're controlling the car as you should control the car, Max, then that is not your fault. If you can't control what another car does, you can only control what your car does. So you take your car and change that to your business and change that to your people. You can only control what you can control. What you can't control, don't even worry about it. Don't think about it. Just do what you can control. And if you have to pivot and you have to change, then let's do it quickly. Let's do it efficiently. If we have to modify things, let's do it efficiently. If we have to then suddenly inject growth into the business, then let's do that quickly. Let's take the opportunities as they are, because it doesn't matter whether the market's up, down, left, right, whatever you call the marketplace, there is always opportunity if you take your time to look for that opportunity and then capitalize on it. So to me, 2021 is no different from any other year. It's just different circumstances. Whether you can control them and whether you can't, it doesn't make any difference. Control what you can control. So guys, I think that's us out for questions, unless there's any more questions sort of coming in from there. As you can see on your screens now, what we have is a 12-day giveaway that we've been giving away, a free Pulse report, which is a report on your business. What we're giving away also is a really nice interactive PDF of the first series we did on how to build your team, and we're going to release more PDFs on the series that we've done on the webinar series. We're on to day 4, so if you want to find it, there's the web address there, or you can find us on LinkedIn. Look for Jump Advisory, go to our page, and they're on there. Click on that and it'll take you straight to the downloadable PDF. There's lots and lots of points on the PDF, including all the videos, but we've also then done a summary of all the points as well to make it a lot easier for you. So please enjoy those, please sign up to them and have a look at those. And as I say, there is a free giveaway for a company that will announce in the new year who'll win a free Pulse report worth £500 on their team. All that just leaves me to say is Paul, Dave and myself would like to wish you all a very, very, very merry festive period and a very, very happy new year. Whatever 2021 brings, we will be here and we'll be moving forward in the most positive way that we can, and we will help you to move forward as well. We'll be doing the webinars. We'll be back on the 6th of January when we've all had a nice break, a few mince pies, a few beers, a few sherries, depending on what you class as sherry, and moving from there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Enjoy your time off, and we'll see you in 2021.
See you guys. Happy New Year. Happy Christmas, everybody. Take care of yourselves. See you soon.
Happy Christmas, everyone.